Hi everybody, welcome to episode 32 of the Photography Explained podcast. In this episode, what are the 20 most popular types of photography? I'm your host Rick, and each week I will try to explain one photographic thing to you in plain English in less than 10 minutes without the irrelevant details. My aim is to explain things in just enough detail to help you and I with our photography and no more. I'm a professionally qualified photographer based in England with a lifetime of photographic experience which I share with you on my podcast. Okay then. That didn't sound very natural, did it? No, I was reading out the stuff there, but it's an ad-lib from here on in. So, what are the 20 most popular types of photography? Now, I need to say that I'm just going to fly through the list and just make a couple of points about them, and then I'm going to come back to the ones I want to talk about. There are some that I've got a lot to say about, and some that I've got not so much to say about, and there are things that I need to know a lot more about myself. And one of the questions as I go through these is, can you make money from them? In no particular order, in alphabetical order, unusually organised for me. The 20 most popular types of photography are architectural, documentary, event, fashion, food, industrial, landscape, macro, newborn, portrait, people, photojournalism, product, sports, still life, stock, street, weather, wedding, and wildlife. Okay, that's my list of 20 types of photography. I'm sure there are others, but this covers most things, and this is how I see it. See, this is the benefit of having your own podcast. This is my view. So let's get straight into the list, starting with number 1, architectural photography. Now, this is what I do. I'm not going to talk about this too much here. Architectural photography is the photographing of buildings. I'm going to talk about architectural photography on the next episode of the podcast. And I'm also going to talk about construction photography in a separate podcast episode. So let's move on from those. Number 2, documentary. Now, this is the best way I can describe this is these people who, like war photographers, people who go into these places of incredible danger and conflict. This is where documentary photography is for me. Can you make a living doing it? Most certainly. Am I going to make a living doing it? No, it sounds far too dangerous. Number 3, event. See, I'll come back to some of these in much more detail, don't worry. Number 3, event photography. Now, this could be any kind of event. Sporting. I've done a couple of sporting events. I've done a couple of other events. Didn't love it. I'm rubbish with flash basically, but event photography is something that you can indeed making a living out of. Number 4, fashion photography. Like event photography, fashion photography, there's a definite living to be made there. It's a specialism all of its own that I know nothing about and I'm not going to cover here. Food photography. More my kind of thing, apart from the fact you need lights and some close-up gear. But food photography is, there's a living to be made there. 6, industrial photography. My kind of thing. Big, large, dirty, smelly installations, big plant, rusting stuff, noise. That's my kind of thing. Can you make a living? You sure can. 7, landscape photography. Love doing landscape photography. Can you make a living doing it? Difficult. Very, very difficult because everybody's doing it. Number 8, macro photography. Photographing small things. A great niche or niche, depending on which side of the pond you are. Can you make a living doing it? Probably. Number 9, newborns. Number 10, portrait. Number 11, people. And number 19, wedding. These are all photographing people. Now, I'm probably the worst person on the planet to advise about anything to do with photographing people because I photograph everything other than people. But yeah, there's lots of business opportunities there for these genres, which I think I'll cover separately. Number 12, photojournalism. Back in the day, lots of people made a living from photojournalism. I think it's more difficult now than ever to get into photojournalism because everyone has a phone, iPhones take great photos, and stock images are everywhere, so difficult. 13, product photography. Everybody needs photographs of their products. It's a great niche to get into, and if you think about it, the list of products are literally endless. I specialise in construction product photography. Problem is, you don't do it that often, but when you do, you can get some big names. I photograph some of the biggest names on the planet. 14, sports photography. I'd love to do this. I've had a dabble at sports photography when I had the Canon 100 to 400mm monster lens, which I took some great photos. the Cricket World Cup in the UK. I got some great photos. The big problem I had was after a few beers, my handling of this massive lens wasn't too good and it caused upset to people who sat in front of me. 15, still life. I need to look into what still life is. Still life to me is paintings and stuff. Yeah, we'll look into that one. 16, stock photography. I want to say something about this. I've tried stock photography. I've not made any money out of it. I've got some stuff on Adobe Stock, and do you know how much money I've made from those? Well, I haven't made it yet because I've never received a payment. It's about 52p, which in American terms is probably about 40 cents. That's it. It's just a market that's got more and more challenging. Now, I'm sure there are people out there who make money out of stock photography. I don't know how. 17, street photography. Now, I know very little about street photography. I'm going to look into that, and I'm going to cover this in definitely in another episode. Losing the ability to speak there, which is a concern. Street photography is something that I've always ignored and shunned and possibly dismissed, absolutely with no reason whatsoever. When I was researching this, one that came up quite often was weather photography, photographing the weather. Not sure about that. 19, I touched on wedding photography. I photographed a wedding once. I won't be doing that again anytime soon. It's absolutely terrifying, not for me. If you're a wedding photographer, you're braver than I am, and hats off to you. No wedding pun intended there. Lastly, wildlife photography. Wildlife photography. I'd love to do that. I can't think of anything better than spending all my time photographing wildlife. So that's something I need to possibly look into and get some trips done. Problem is I need all my gear now because I sold all the telephoto stuff. Okay, can you make a living out of these? You can, but it's tough. I will talk about this most definitely in a future episode. The one thing I will say now, to make a living, don't try and do everything. Pick one thing and do that one thing. I photograph buildings, construction. That is it. Nothing else. Of course I do the odd landscape and travel thing, but I don't market any of that. That's just my personal stuff. Okay, quick recap. In this episode, I've listed the 20 most popular types of photography and told you a very little about each of them. What do I want you to do now? Do this one thing. Think of which of these areas of photography you could focus on. Just one. Number 2, let me know on Twitter. Send a message to @RickPhoto. Tell me what that one thing is and tell me why. I'd love to hear from you. Number 3, please subscribe to my podcast if you enjoyed this episode or any other episode I have to say. This helps me tremendously. 4, rate and review my podcast. Again, if you enjoy this episode, this helps me greatly. If you thought it was rubbish, please don't rate me because I'll get a low rating and I don't want any of them. Number 5, and lastly, tell someone you know about my podcast. This also helps me. Next episode. In the next episode, I'm going straight into architectural photography. This is what I do. I'm not going to do architectural photography in 10 minutes. I'll warn you now. I'm so excited to talk about this. I genuinely am excited. I'll stop myself there because I'm a bit over time. Thank you very much for listening to my small but perfectly formed podcast. Check out my website, rickmcavoyphotography.com, where you can find out all about me and my architectural and construction photography work, as well as my blog, where you can learn lots about photography and me. And I need to mention here again, because I keep on forgetting, check out the photographyexplainedpodcast.com, the website just for this podcast. Finally, let me know if there's a photographic thing you want me to explain. Head over to the website and you'll see how to do it. If you do, and I explain your thing, I'll give you a shout out on that episode. The list is live on photographyexplained.com. This episode was brought to you by the power of black coffee, because I'm stopping having dairy stuff now, which is proving quite difficult, and the power of optimism and the anticipation of talking about what I do and love doing. I'm done. I've been Rick McEvoy. Thanks again for listening and for giving me 10 minutes of your valuable time, and I hope to see you on the next episode. Cheers from me, Rick.